Okay, so imagine you're diving, like you're underwater, everything's blue and wavy, and you're thinking, wow, nature is beautiful or whatever. And then you look down and there's another lake just sitting there on the ocean floor, a lake within a lake, which is technically within another lake if you count Earth's water cycle, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. I've been absolutely spiraling about underwater lakes lately because, like, the concept alone broke my brain the first time I heard about it, and I feel like nobody talks about how absurd this is. So today, I'm going to ramble about why underwater lakes are genuinely one of the weirdest things on this planet, and why everything about them feels like a glitch in reality. First of all, let's address the obvious question, which is, how does a lake exist underwater? Like, isn't the ocean already water? How do you have water sitting on top of water? And the answer is honestly so simple it makes you feel dumb for not figuring it out yourself. It's brine. Super salty water. Like, super salty. So salty that it's denser than regular seawater, so it just sinks and pools into lakes and rivers and even waterfalls, all under the ocean. I remember the first time I saw footage of this, and I literally had to pause the video because my brain couldn't process it. There's this shot of a submarine hovering over what looks like a shoreline, and below it is this perfectly defined surface of water with ripples and everything, and it looks exactly like a regular lake, except it's hundreds of feet underwater. The submarine can literally float on top of this underwater lake. A submarine floating on a lake. That's underwater. I mean, sigh, you know? And here's where it gets weirder. These brine pools have shores. They have beaches. There are actual coastlines down there with like mussels and tube worms just chilling on the beach of an underwater lake like they're on vacation. Except, if you're a regular fish and you accidentally swim into one of these things, you die immediately. Because the salt concentration is so insanely high that it's basically toxic. So these underwater lakes are essentially death traps disguised as lakes. I've spent way too much time thinking about what it would be like to be a fish, just living your fish life, and then you swim into what you think is just more ocean. But nope, it's actually a completely different body of water with different chemistry, and you just die. That's like if I was walking down the street and stepped into a puddle, and the puddle was actually made of mercury or something, and I just instantly perished. Nature is wild. Also, can we talk about the fact that these things have their own ecosystems? Like, there are bacteria and organisms that only live in these brine pools and nowhere else. They've evolved to survive in these hypersaline environments that would kill everything else, which means evolution looked at an underwater poison lake and was like, yeah, let's make some creatures that can vibe here. Life finds a way and all that, but come on. This feels excessive. The methane thing really gets me too. A lot of these brine pools are fed by cold seeps, where methane and other hydrocarbons are seeping out of the ocean floor. And this methane mixes with the brine and creates these toxic, oxygen-free environments. So you've got an underwater lake that's not only super salty, but also full of methane and devoid of oxygen. It's basically the ocean's version of a Hostile Planet from a sci-fi movie, except it's real and it's right here on Earth in the Gulf of Mexico and the Mediterranean and various other places. I saw this one documentary, I think it was Blue Planet or something, where they showed a shark that had died and fallen into a brine pool, and the footage was genuinely unsettling because the shark just stayed there, perfectly preserved, because nothing can decompose in that environment. So these underwater lakes are full of like pickled dead animals that have been down there for who knows how long, which is simultaneously fascinating and horrifying. Mostly horrifying, if I'm being honest. Speaking of which, scientists actually use submersibles to explore these things, and the footage is absolutely surreal. Like I mentioned earlier, you can see the submarine literally resting on the surface of the brine pool, and when they send probes down into it, the probe goes through this wavy interface layer, and then it's in the brine, and everything looks different. The visibility changes, the density changes, it's like watching something pass through a portal to another dimension, except it's just water. Very salty water, but still. The fact that these things exist at all feels like evidence that we barely understand our own planet. Like, we've been living on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years, and we only discovered underwater lakes existed in the 1970s or something. 1970s, that's when we discovered lakes under the ocean. We put people on the moon before we knew there were lakes under the ocean. That's genuinely insane to me. And I know I keep saying lake, but there are also underwater rivers and waterfalls made of brine, which is somehow even more mind-bending. There's this underwater river in Mexico in a cenote system where you can dive and watch brine flowing like an actual river with trees and leaves and debris being carried along the riverbed, except you're already underwater. It's like Inception, but wetter. You know what I mean. The whole thing just makes me think about how little we actually know about the deep ocean. We've explored more of space than we have our own ocean floor, which is a statistic everyone loves to throw around, but it really hits different when you realize we're still discovering entirely new types of geological features down there. Who knows what else is lurking in the deep that we just haven't found yet? Maybe there are underwater mountains made of jello. Maybe there are inverted oceans of air. I'm being ridiculous now, but honestly, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised. Anyway, the point is, underwater lakes are weird. They shouldn't exist according to my basic understanding of how water works, but they do, and they're full of dead pickled animals and toxic bacteria and methane. And honestly, I think that's beautiful in a deeply unsettling way. Nature really said, "You thought you understood lakes? Think again." Thanks for listening to me ramble about this for 7 minutes. I genuinely cannot stop thinking about it, and I needed to share this existential crisis with someone. If you also think underwater lakes are bonkers, let me know in the comments, I guess. Okay, I'm done now. Peace.